Hi, everyone. Alta Asks Live viewers. I see a lot of people I recognize in this group are repeat customers and some new faces. So welcome to everyone. If you are new to us, we are Alta, a magazine, a website, a clubhouse, now a virtual conversation series. My name is Beth Spotswood. I'm our digital editor. And for today's Alta Ask Live, we have Heather Scott Partington. She is our host of this series. She is a book critic, a teacher, and a wonderful contributor to the magazine and the website. And today she's going to be in conversation with Alta's editor at large, the spectacular and award-winning Mary Melton. Mary wrote for our current issue what she's described as one of, if not the most personal essay of her career. And we're going to be talking about her 15-day road trip along Route 66, what that meant for her family, what she learned about her family and our country. So I really encourage you. Oh, I'll add that button at the bottom. Sorry. I'll add that right now. But Heather and Mary will chat for about 20 minutes. Please ask any questions that you have for either one of them in either the comments section. Oh, we've got some questions already popping up. I will handle those. I'm going to disappear for now and return at the end. We'll do a Q&A with Mary. If you come late or have to leave early, don't worry. This whole conversation will be up on Alta Online later today. With that, I'm going to let Heather and Mary take it away.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Hi, Mary.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you could be a part of this series and that I get to meet you sort of virtually in person.
I feel like I know you from all of the great hosting duties you do.
Oh, good. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, I'm very happy to have this story out there. It was it was a strange time to be writing a story like this, to really dig into yourself. I know a lot of people have said they've kind of struggled with reading right now and being able to concentrate on things. And so I haven't written a story like this in a while. So it was kind of an odd time to do that. And I wrote this actually really early into the quarantine, before kind of the nation, it really exploded. So this story, I don't know if it would have been a little different if I had written it in the last 2 weeks than when I had finished it a few months ago. But it ultimately felt good to sit in those feelings and try to understand them and process them a few years later and revisit what is a really nice memory for my family.
Yeah, it's wonderfully personal, but also, as Beth was mentioning, there's so much about our country, which I think it's interesting to me that it was written a while ago and before some of the movements for change really took off. But I think it's definitely still relevant and has some overlap with what's happening right now. I was wondering if you could just give kind of an overview of what was the impetus for taking this trip, and who were you traveling with?
Yeah, my son Isaac is obsessed with maps and roads and streetlights and power lines and all things or the urban landscape. And he's on the autism spectrum. And lots of kids on the autism spectrum are really interested in like tunnels and things that go, like, where do things begin and end? It's just kind of an interesting aspect for a lot of kids of an area that they just really like to know a lot about. Like, he was really interested in the Titanic for a long time. So one of our habits and joys on the weekends, we're driving across the city. So on the weekends, this is about 5 years ago, we would just take a street in LA and just drive the entirety of that street. So that could be 40 miles of Sepulveda Boulevard, or in the case of Route 66, 60 miles of Foothill Boulevard, which we drove one day. And at the very end of it, we actually got stopped by some police activity and we couldn't end it. We're like, no, we're a mile from the end of this. And my son said to me, Mom, where does the road go from here? And I say, I don't know. I know this is part of Route 66. And for all that I know about American history and roadside percentage, like I know a lot about Route 66, but I actually don't, because I've never driven it and I don't know where it goes from here. So in that moment, we decided that would be our summer vacation. We would drive the entirety of Route 66 so we could tell him where the road went from there. So it was my husband, Ed, and my son, Isaac, and I. We actually flew to Chicago and drove the road back because we felt like that was the way most of America has experienced this road. It was this conduit to come to California and make a new life for yourself from the time it first was established in the late 20s. So we felt like we needed to retake take that journey. And what was really interesting and surprising to me is, because we think the interstate's just overtaken everything and there's nothing left of small town America, is kind of this coastal cliche that we have. We really felt like we should experience it like that, but also stay on the original road as much as possible. And you can drive 85% of this road in its original state, which is kind of incredible. Only about 15% of the time are you forced onto a freeway.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. You mentioned this in the article, but that most people assume that since it was decommissioned, is that that's the term, in 1985, that it's not, that not a lot of it survives. And I was surprised by how much you guys were able to trace the original route.
I mean, it's a lot of like stop signs and left turns and right turns. And we took 2 weeks to do it, and we were moving quickly. Like we weren't stopping in places for 3 days. Like we were in a different hotel for 14 nights in a row. So we were moving, and there were some days when we I don't think we ever drove less than 100 miles a day, and there were some days when we drove more than that. When you're driving across Texas or Oklahoma, like there's some pretty long expanses, but we were moving. So I always recommend to people, if they're going to do this, to really give themselves at least 2 weeks, because you do want to experience, I call it on the ground flyover country. Like this is, especially for coastal folks, like, you fly over these areas, maybe if you're like us at all, like we take trains across the country a lot. We've done that often, but actually being on the road and driving into these towns and really getting to know the people who live there, in that brief window, that you have, and getting to see it on the ground was a really different experience.
What did you notice about some of those areas? I know I have a son also who was heavily influenced by the cars moving in. You mentioned that in the article as well, but it's so that when I think of Route 66, that is what I think of the imagery from the movie. I think of the art that's now become part of theme parks and things like that in Southern California. Were you surprised? Did the myth of Route 66 match up with the reality of what you guys encountered?
It did, and it didn't. There is, and cars absolutely also factored into this trip making decision, because my son loves the movie, as do we. And they did a brilliant job of bringing those landmarks and aesthetically to life in the movie. It's very true to the landscape, which is really incredible. And if you've been to Cars Land in California Adventure, it's really authentic. It feels really authentic. But that is one filter through which to see and experience the road. And that tends to be more of the nostalgic Americana, gee whiz, we're going to get choco peanut butter pies and, malts and, and see this pretty road and this pretty place. And the reality is Route 66 goes through a lot of forsaken lands, like a lot of corners of this country that have been completely forgotten and kind of shunted to the side. So you have this weird mix of these diners that were founded in the 80s that are retro nostalgic, like 1950s themed diners with little jukeboxes on your table, where your server comes to you, and your server obviously was or is a recovering meth addict, right? I mean, like there are telltale signs. You're in beautiful Missouri, which is the meth producing capital of America, going over the rolling hills with the clicking cicadas and seeing billboards for addiction, one after another. There were tiny little scales for sale at the mini marts. So like there's this reality of the America that we're living in today that is much too often ignored in mainstream media. That is true. And to actually be seeing it and to be seeing, and I don't want to say like I'm painting this completely bleak picture of this experience, but the reality of the experience is a lot of these towns that's the Cars plot line, totally forsaken and forgotten when the interstate came through. So you've got lots of main streets that have that are just broken down, and there's remnants of them, but there's lots of it's almost like archaeological ruins on this route. And that's a reason why I want to retake the route again. And this is a reason why a lot of people do take it more than once, because it's fleeting. There are things that are going away that I signed up for the Route 66 newsletter, so I get like a weekly update of what's going on. And there's just the drive-ins that have shut down and the cafes and the hotels. And there's also like a sense of renewal for a lot of places that are tapping into that. But there is definitely this feeling that there's a lot gone. And it's also very, very, very beautiful. Like when you get to the Southwest, it's just absolutely, it's stunning. I'm showing my Southwest bias clearly, but Arizona, New Mexico are just really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Can you talk also a little bit about politically what was happening as you guys were traveling and how that kind of influenced the way that you viewed some of those forsaken areas?
Absolutely. This just happened to coincide with the very beginnings of Donald Trump emerging as the presidential candidate. This was 5 years ago, summer, almost exactly 5 years ago. I think we left on August 1st of 2015. And this was really a way to take the pulse of the country at that moment. And we would not really listen to news headlines while we were on the road. My son either preferred listening to Willie, on Willie's Roadhouse, or we just wouldn't listen to any music and just, be quiet in it. But in the evenings, we would turn on the news and we would watch, these rallies and and we happened to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma when the first Republican debate took place. So it was the first time you really got to see Trump in a lineup. And my son and I watched it in the hotel bar, and my husband watched it because the Tulsa Democratic Club happened to be having a party in the lobby to watch, or in a room to watch it. And I was pretty scared right from the beginning. I'm showing my political feelings, but I came back from that trip and I talked with my coworkers, and you can really ask any of the colleagues I had at the time. And I said, have you watched Donald Trump? Have you seen this and seen him? And they're like, oh, Donald Trump now. And I'm like, you need to see this because I think he's going to win this election. And I was literally the only person in my office who was convinced that Donald Trump was going to win the election. And I swear to you, that trip informed that decision, because I just realized he's talking to people for whatever crazy reason, like, he's relatable to people. How is this possible? They're in completely different planets, but he's talking to people who have been forgotten, who also are more complicated than that. But he's able to convey a message of you've been screwed, that you don't really see. And not that we don't have extreme poverty in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York, right? But it's just a different experience. And I could tell he was tapping into something, and combined with taking Amtrak a lot and talking to people a lot in Middle America, and I've spent a lot of time in the Midwest in general. I really, and in the South, in Texas, I was really struck by that moment. So it was this weird juxtaposition of seeing him emerge and seeing this country and being really scared about where all of this was going. Yeah.
Changing gears just a little bit. You mentioned in the essay how you guys thought that you would approach things like food, and how that sort of changed. You want to speak for just a minute about how that went down in your little ice chest that you started with?
We found this really janky little styrofoam ice chest on top of a trash can at the rental kiosk at the O'Hare Airport. And I was like, we should get one of those. And let's go to Whole Foods and get a bunch of healthy snacks, because we're going to be on the road for 2 weeks. And of course, like the first stop we made in Illinois was at like the Polka Dot Drive-In, and we had milkshakes, and Isaac had incredibly greasy, cheeseburgers. And that just like went right out the window. I find it hard to believe that a single pig is still alive in the United States, just based on how much pork consumption goes on in this country. And again, being in my Los Angeles, bubble, like, oh my God, like, just so we pretty much were faced with a menu that was either pork or cheese, like for the next 14 days. And I don't really eat pork. So like this, and my husband doesn't at all. So this was a problem. So I ate a lot of really sad salads. And I get it. And I know, like, we hear from people like Oklahoma City's got good restaurants in St. Louis. And we did have some really great barbecue in St. Louis. But we just kind of embraced, we're on this trip. We're just going to go for it with these diners. We're going to be part of the experience. I'm not going to seek out, the bistro or whatever, like, I'm not going to probably go searching for this. Like, I want to be this. But by the time we got to Santa Fe, which is a city I love and am familiar with, like, I really think I shed tears because there was a neighborhood. I said, oh God, I have to get an avocado. I've been deprived of an avocado for 10 days, and I felt so bougie and ridiculous. But I felt deeply appreciative of how much access we have in Los Angeles and California in general to unbelievably, great fresh produce and food. And we're just so lucky that we have that. And it does not surprise me that heart disease is the leading cause of death in this country, because it's bad out there. It's hardcore.
Yeah.
But Ted Drew's frozen custard in St. Louis is a must. So that one I give a total thumbs up to if you're on the road.
You also mentioned that you pre-planned, it sounds like almost all or all of your hotel rooms, and that worked out most of the time. Was there anything that, so if you do take a trip again, was there anything about the planning or the preparation that you would approach differently on a second trip?
Yeah, so my son's already planned the second trip, and we're good. This time he wants to do it from here to there. And he already has 15 different places to stop along the way, which cracks me up, and 15 different hotels. There are a couple I would definitely revisit and go to. The La Posada in Winslow, Arizona, which mixes my two favorite things, roads and rails, because it's right on the Amtrak rail lines. It's also just a beautiful hotel. They've done a great job with it. The Blue Swallow Motel, which I'm sporting a Blue Swallow t-shirt today, in Tucumcari, New Mexico, which just recently changed hands, changed ownership. And funny aside, when I saw a note about the fact that the Blue Swallow was up for sale, my husband, like, for a hot minute, like, should we buy that? Like, what do you think? Like, can we just become these people? And we really thought about it for 5 minutes. That's just an amazing, amazing motel. So there's definitely ones I would revisit and go back to. And then a couple only one that I would not, which was kind of our disastrous second to last place that we went, which I can tell you about. But you do have to plan out ahead of time for these more classic hotels. The Wagon Wheel in Missouri, which is completely an inspiration for the hotel and cars. The Wigwams. There's one in Holbrook, Arizona, and one in San Bernardino that are shaped like these concrete teepees that you sleep in. Those you usually do need to reserve ahead of time, because this is a popular route. Like, it's and I wonder and I worry a lot about how it's doing this summer, because at least 40% of the people you meet and see on the route are from Europe. It is really a popular classic Americana. It's kind of like when you go to Death Valley in July and August, and the only people you meet are German or French. Like, it just seems like it's just something like that. That's part of the European experience that you have to check off. New York City, Las Vegas, and maybe Route 66. So we met so many people who are European. So I know with travel restrictions that's really the hotels have taken a really hard hit with that. But you do need to reserve them, the classic ones, ahead of time, because they will fill up.
Yeah.
Early. Yeah.
What's if you could say one of your absolute favorite things that you guys saw or that you did together, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, there was so many amazing moments. It's such a silly thing, and there's really not a lot there, but Cadillac Ranch, to me, which is this outside of Amarillo, this classic kind of piece of folk art, which is just these buried Cadillacs in the desert that are all painted wild colors. And it's something that just visually, it's in the background, I think, in cars. It's something that just visually was always what I thought of when I thought of Route 66. Like, that just was like an iconic a piece of roadside Americana. So actually getting to go there, and people just have spray cans there. They just hand you a spray can when you get there, and you just spray your name over it. And your name is sprayed over like probably within an hour later. Right. But it just felt like, oh, we're all in this together. It was just this weird. And that's something that I think just overall was such a great part of this experience, is because of the nature of the trip. And a lot of people take 2 weeks to do it. The people you're going to leave with, like out of Chicago, you end up pacing the same people. So we would see the same families and the same people at various stops along the way, which just, there's that communal experience feel. I'm very into that. Like, I'm always seeking, I think that's why I love rail travel so much. This feeling that we're all in this and doing this adventure. The only problem I found with that was, and I write about this in the story, we had a couple who I called the impossibly attractive European couple, who paced us with their small swimsuits, and they just were beautiful to look at, and they were very intimidating. And they were like this Spanish couple that just were gorgeous, who we got to see every couple of stops along the way.
Well, that's a sort of I guess, a good place for us to end. You have something that you'd like to read from the essay for us? Let me just grab that. Maybe if you want to take a question, maybe while I grab that, is that okay? Or does Jeff want to come back on for that? She will, but I saw one before we got started. So one of the viewers asked, what does Isaac have to say about the trip now? Does he have fond memories of it? Is it something that comes up in conversation?
Yes, definitely. He is really, this was one of his favorite trips. We travel a lot. We've been very fortunate as a family, and it's been a very big priority for me in raising him that my parents traveled with me a lot. So we travel a lot with him. I think that there's no better really life experience you can have than experiencing the way other people live. And it just makes you into such a better person if you can have access to that. So he talks a lot about this trip, and he's talked about it a lot more because I've been thinking about it more this year, and he started planning the second version of it. I did have him read the story, which he has never really done that before for me, and he fact checked it. And he actually caught one thing, which I was really hopeful for, but it was very validating because he would read it and I would be interpreting. And as Beth said, this is a very personal story for me, and so I would be interpreting and my feelings and talking about his, and he would say at the end of reading it, he's like, "That's true, Mom. Yeah, that's true." And I was like, "That's great. Okay, good," because I was kind of sweating that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was great, but it was really, really meaningful to him and he has a very broad, look at and viewpoint about America. He knows his world isn't small, and that's what I'm always trying to convey to him as a parent. Like we're a small part of this, but the world is really big, and there's so much to see and so many experiences to have.
Oh, that's
so
great.
Yeah, I will read something. And it's just be a couple minutes, I think. Okay. So we follow a meticulously researched book, the Easy 66 Guide, that keeps us on as much of the original road as possible. That could be a steel truss bridge or a muddy, narrow tunnel under a rail crossing. In the 30s and 40s, many of Route 66's 2 lanes gave way to 4-lane blacktops, or later to frontage roads that run alongside zooming highways. Every effort to get us where we're going faster has made it easier to skip what's most beautiful, to abandon the provincial, particular, and just plain weird for an endless parade of golden arches and target bullseyes, to cross the country without ever experiencing the country. These shortcuts enable us not just to skip towns, but also to skip life. I call it on-the-ground flyover. Stick to the interstate and you sacrifice roadside attractions like the Gemini Giant, a 30-foot-tall fiberglass overachiever in a space helmet who cradles a small rocket ship, or the Bunyan Giant, a 19-foot-high lumberjack who holds a hot dog instead of a log, and a dozen or so other gargantuan creations Isaac stands beneath in awe. No corn dogs at the Cozy Dog Drive-In or frozen custard at Ted Drew's, just 2 of countless delicacies we devour. No option to notice, let alone pull over and assist, a turtle as it crosses a 1.5-mile portion of brick-paved 66 outside of Springfield, Illinois. We resist the temptation to place our hard-shelled friend in the back seat for a sunnier life in Los Angeles. Right before crossing the Mississippi River into Missouri, we encounter a jumble of streets, right turn here, left there, stop sign once, twice, 3 times go, that constitute Route 66 through East St. Louis. The blighted city has the highest murder rate of any in the United States. To imagine, we were nudging a turtle into a cornfield a few hours ago. East St. Louis is a gateway to a string of neglected main streets we will rumble along from here to the southwest, to the parts of the country the coasts rarely hear from, to a side of America I acknowledge that Isaac knows little about, like too many of us. As parents, we'd long believed, hoped at least, that we traveled the road that connects with Isaac. We've indulged his passions, music, travel, even miniature golf. Whatever he's loved, we've gone all in. His autism can shield him from hard truths. We're uncertain at times how deeply he grasps serious situations. But now, staring at the boarded up storefronts and decaying homes of East St. Louis, I question, have we used his autism to shield him? Have we underestimated his ability to process difficult feelings? Have we slipped onto a bypass and forgotten that he's maturing and forming opinions of his own? The next morning, he silently addresses my last question. There's a cute girl in our hotel restaurant who set her eyes on my wavy-haired blonde boy, and I notice him sneaking peeks at her when not drenching his French toast in maple syrup. It's the first time I've seen an unspoken interaction, which is not to say it's his first interaction. My eyes are more open to what's transpiring right in front of me.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to talk with you today. We're going to have Beth come back and ask some questions from the viewers. Oh, I think Beth, you're muted. Beth.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, we have let me scroll up here. We've got a question from everyone's favorite publisher, Will Hurst. Mary, were you a Jack Kerouac fan or doubter? What's your critical evaluation of On the Road?
Oh, such a good question. Well, I haven't read On the Road in years. At the time that I read On the Road, and it's just so good because I know if I read it now, I would have a different perspective. At the time I read it, I was all in. Like I was like, yes, I love travel. I love discovery. I love that sense. I've always been attracted to any road trip movies, road trip stories. I love planes. I love trains. I love ships. For fun in our house, we watch train videos at night about famous train rides in the country. So for me, like I did feel very connected to that sense of, at the time that I read it, at that moment in my life, of the open road, of the easy rider, this feeling that the possibility of self-discovery, when you get out of your comfort zone and open yourself up to learn from other people. So yeah, but I wonder if I read it now and if I'd be reading it through a different filter. I found that with a few movies recently that I've seen, like, oh wow, I love this movie when I was a teenager, and how did I even adjust to be a functioning adult when I see it now?
So Heather asked the first question by our viewer, Louise. The second is, did you keep a journal every night of this road trip?
Yeah, that I didn't keep a formal journal. I had that easy guidebook that I mentioned before that I had right with me the entire time we were on that trip, because that book really, and we'll maybe we can put a link to it. It's such a great book. It's called The Easy Guidebook, and it has step by step, like make a right here, make a left here, to keep you on the original road. It's like the spiral notebook. So I always had that with me. So when Isaac would say things in the car, I just would write them down in the margins of that book. And when we would see something, I would write it down. Turtle, road, cornfield, right? And I just did these 1 or 2 word memories. And I say this because I think journals can be very intimidating to people. I think they can feel like, like I can't get it all down, or it's like, get my feelings. And it really is, and I do this now in my own life. Like I just take notes during the day, a jot a word here or there of something, and then I collect them together every month. And I go, okay, what are the things I want to remember from this month? So that's how I journal. So that's how I ended up having this great record of this trip. And it was also really convenient when I was writing the story, because they were right next to where they happened, because it was in the guidebook. So it wasn't a formal journal, but it was enough that all I needed to see was the word turtle, and that took me right back to that moment. So sometimes just capturing, as a writer or as someone who just wants a memory, people who have young children, like, you want to keep these memories, just keeping a word or 2 is enough to spark that without you having to spell it all out, which is hard to find the time to do.
As you've been talking, I've been trying to find the easy, I think it's EZ, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been able to find it on mass market websites. I've not been able to find it on an independent bookseller, which we try to exclusively do here at Alta. So if I can do that, I'm going to link to that. But if you want to get it elsewhere, it's EZ, the letters E and Z 66.
And this book is just, I have to just say, the author of the book lives in Oklahoma, and his phone number he's in the book. He's like, hey, if you're going to be coming through my town in Oklahoma, give me a call. And I did, and he wasn't home. I was so bummed.
Oh, no.
But it's like the only guidebook I've ever read where the guy's like, give me a call when you're coming through.
Oh my God. I would be a little wary of that. The last question is mine, if I may. Oh wait, but let me make sure we have another one pop in. I come last. Did Al Pacino play a role in your Route 66 adventure?
Oh my gosh, how could I have left this most important moment out? So we were driving home. It was our final day from the wigwam. I woke up in a concrete teepee in San Bernardino in August. Not necessarily what I would have thought of as my vacation dream, but it was awesome. And we drove home, and we're driving to Santa Monica because we actually, took the entirety of the route, which it terminates a couple blocks from the Santa Monica Pier, but symbolically now everyone goes to the Santa Monica Pier And a smart shopkeeper has put up a sign saying end of the trail, and you get your picture taken there. And I think he even gave us a certificate. And so we got to West Hollywood, and because Route 66 goes right through the heart of West Hollywood. And of course, we know we're in Los Angeles County because even on a Sunday at 2 p.m, there's a ton of traffic on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I'm feeling very wistful and really sad that this adventure and familial bonding experience is coming to an end. And I'm kind of looking out my passenger window, and Ed's driving, and I see this man with a goatee driving this big white Range Rover. And I say to Ed, oh my God, we're driving next to Al Pacino. And it's Al Pacino on Santa Monica Boulevard. And we pace him for a while. And Ed's like, well, we're home, that's for sure, because you weren't going to see that on the Turtle Highway in Missouri. So Al Pacino did The Godfather, was on the Mother Road. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my last question, we have like 2 seconds. Can I hear about the horrible hotel?
Oh, of course. So I really think I did a good job. It was 14 different hotels. Hadn't ever stayed in any of them. So it's a gamble. And our second to last night, we're coming into Kingman, Arizona. Not exactly America's vacation land. I hope we don't have any callers from Kingman. And I had made a reservation for a cute little cabin in the mountains, but we were coming in late, and I felt like, oh, we gotta, we better stick to the road. We need to be out early tomorrow. It's a long drive across the Mojave Desert tomorrow. So I made a last-minute reservation from Jerry's guidebook, by the way, because he described this hotel as having great neon. I'm like, well, that's all I need. Great neon, I'm pretty much sold. And I've got a pretty low bar, honestly. Like, I can handle a lot when it comes to subpar hotel accommodations. I grew up in travel lodges, so I don't have, so it's like, I'm not a Four Seasons, like necessarily, I don't have anything against them, but I'm not. So we roll into the Hilltop Motel, and it is a hellhole. And it from the beginning. Even the dog in the lobby didn't seem right. And so we get into the room, we're unpacking, things are moldy, it smells horrible. And Isaac and I pause, and we watch this huge, I'm not kidding, this huge bug. I don't even know what it was, walk across the fire retardant polyester bedspread. And Isaac goes, Mom, this place is icky. I'm like, yes, it is. And so we bolt out of there, and we gave the guy the key, and we said, keep your $58.20. We're going to go find another hotel. And so we found a Ramada, which Isaac decided was called Ramada. And so we've now permanently adopted that. So it's always now going to be the Ramada Inn. And it was like a Four Seasons to me that night. The Hilltop has since closed. I have heard from the Route 66 newsletter that it is under new ownership. I can only have high hopes that things will get better for it, because it really was a hellhole. And I looked it up later, and it's where Timothy McVeigh stayed on his way to Oklahoma City. I'm not making that up. Yeah. So it wasn't just in our heads that there was something wrong with the place. But I have high hopes that it can be reborn into something wonderful again.
Thank you for bringing it around to true crime for me.
A special nod for you, Beth. I knew that would light you up.
All right. This was spectacular. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Please tune in next week at, here's Jerry, the author's website. Thanks, Mark. Jerry66.com.
Nice.
Next week, we have Ishmael Reed, a poet, an activist, an educator, a playwright, a contributor to Alta, a longtime friend of the magazine, a member of our editorial board. Ishmael is going to join us Wednesday. I forget the date, but whatever 7 days from today is.
22nd.
What's today?
The 22nd. Next Wednesday, the 22nd.
Okay, Wednesday the 22nd. Ishmael Reed, 12:30 here at Crowdcast. So please do join us for that. Heather, wonderful as always. And Mary, it is a pleasure to work with you and a pleasure to see you here. Thank you guys so much.
Such a pleasure. And look me up if any of you have any questions about the route. Look me up. I'm happy to guide you.
Mary at altaonline.com.
There you go.
Boom. There you go.
All right.
All right. Thanks everyone. This will be up on Alta Online later this afternoon. Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
All right, thanks. Bye.